Something I've always wanted to do is build a guitar from scratch, and so I'm starting that process now. And the first thing I'm going to do is lay out my fretboard. And so StewMac has a fret position calculator that's very helpful. You can put in the number of frets and the scale length, and then once you hit calculate, it'll give you where each fret should be in relation to the nut. And so I'm going to go ahead and use this. I'm going to print it out, and I'm going to keep it by as I lay these frets out. And I'm going to use Inkscape for this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a straight line. And this line needs to be perpendicular. It needs to be exactly 90 degrees so that each line after this will also be 90, because you're going to be copying and pasting. Now I'm going to place this line. What I want to do is basically have it at 3 inches long, and that doesn't really mean anything other than I just want it to be long enough to where it's wider than the fretboard, and it's an easy number to split in half. So I'm going to put 1.5 inches above the 0 and 1.5 inches below. So I'm going to set the y-axis at -1.5, and that way the line is exactly centered on the 0. And then I'm going to take the page border out of the document properties just because I don't need it. And later we're going to put guidelines in at the 0 anyway, so we'll see that later. And now what I want to do is this first line is going to act as the nut, and so every subsequent line is going to be in relation to that nut. And the first one, as you can see from the scale calculator from StewMac, is at 1.347. So I'm going to copy and paste and make another line, and I'm going to set that at -1.5 on the y-axis. And actually messed up there, and so I'm gonna have to go back and set -1.5 for the y. That keeps it exactly lined up with the other one. And then the x is going to be 1.347 because that's the distance from the nut for the first fret. And then from there on, you're just going to follow that printout. Make sure that each fret is -1.5 to keep them lined up, and then you're just going to type in the x value for whatever the next fret should be distance-wise from the nut, and then you're going to lay them all out until you get to the 22nd fret, and then you're going to have your frets laid out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and number these just because it's easy. I didn't show that part, so all you need to do is just use the text function on here and just number the frets. It'll be easier as you go forward. And now I'm going to drag a guideline from the top down. And like I said earlier, I'm going to set this at 0 so that is right in the middle of each of those lines, because I want it to be dead on in the middle so that when we lay out our inlays later, it'll be easy. Now you're going to drag more guidelines in from the left, and you're going to place those where all of your inlays will go. And so now that we have those kind of in a general area, we're going to get them exactly in the middle because we want to line up our inlays off of that. So the distance between fret 4 and 5, as you can see, is 1.069. So you just take that 1.069, divide by 2, and that's going to give you exactly half. And then you're going to add that number back to the distance that fret 4 was from the nut, and that gives you 5.4855. So that is going to be where you want to line up this guideline here for the inlay between frets 4 and 5. So once you get that entered, and I had already done that for the 1 and the 3rd fret, so just going to do that for all of them. You're going to find the center point by taking the middle of those two, and then you're going to add it to the previous fret. And now what I'm going to do is draw lines outside the nut and the 22nd fret, and these lines are going to be there so that I can connect them and create a taper for the outside edges of the neck. And so I'm going to copy and paste this line, and I'm going to put it, basically the distance it needs to be here is to create the width of the nut once you glue the nut in, and I found that to be 0.186 based on the nut I'm going to use. And then the width of the neck here is 1.65. And so you want to set the width here. Just make sure that this is on the center line and that it's the right distance away from the nut edge, so that when you glue your nut in, it's the right size. And then you're going to want to create another line at the end. And I just made this the same distance from fret 22 as 22 was from 21. And so I just set that at the same distance. And the width of the neck here after the 22nd fret needs to be 2.188. And again, you can set this however wide you want your neck to be. This is what I decided on. And so make sure it's at the center line and it's the right distance away from that other fret. And then once you got that set and you know it's centered, then you can simply connect these two together. So just draw a line connecting one to the other. And next you want to lay out your inlays. And so this is basically just drawing circles and making sure that these circles are the size that you want your inlays to be. Typically inlays are 1/4 of an inch in diameter. So I'm going to set this at 0.25 and then I'm going to basically copy and paste. And just make sure these snap to the center point, copy and paste them, and put them on each fret except for 12. Because 12 is where you're going to do the double dot inlay. And now with the 12th fret, it's going to be a little different because you've got your center line in between frets 11 and 12 drawn, but now you need center lines between the outside edge of the neck and the center line. So you're going to measure that, and that is going to be from the center to the outside is 1.007. So you want to take 1.007 and divide that by 2. And I messed up and did 1.07, so my calculation was wrong here. But just be careful when you're doing that. I went back and fixed it, but for this video, it's a little bit off. So you're going to take the center point of that, and again, you're going to just use that actual number you got because you're coming off of the center line, which is 0. Then you're going to set those guidelines at the correct distance, and then go ahead and grab another circle, copy it, paste it, make sure you snap it to the center point that you just created, and then your 12th fret inlays are also done. And so that's how I laid out my fretboard for the guitar I'm going to build. I hope that was helpful, and I will have more videos coming as this build progresses. Thanks for watching.